agenda item 1. Can I ask Sarah, is there any apologies?
No apologies, convener.
Thank you. Have any elected members any declarations of interest to raise? Oops, that's not me. Okay, Councillor Beattie, can I go with you first?
Yeah, not so much a declaration of interest, Nancy. So item 6, I'm a board member of the Cairngorms National Park Authority, which is affected by NPF4. And also for 10 and 11, I work for the local MSP who was contacted by both of those, although I had no part in any of the correspondence or any action in there. So it's really just for transparency.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Beattie. Councillor Braze?
Yes, again, mine is a statement of transparency regarding item number 7, Cononside Farm, and number 11, the pan at Bulwilo Farm. I know the applicants in both cases have done for many years, but not on a basis that would give me any reason to doubt my ability to act independently in this.
Thank you, Councillor Braze. Councillor Durno?
Yeah, thanks, convener. Yes, a declaration of I attend the Woolly Workers with Annie Whitehead. I had correspondence regarding her contacting the office about this meeting, but I gave no discussion about the planning meeting at all. Thank you.
Yes.
Just for clarity, is it a declaration of interest or a statement of transparency?
Yeah,
Probably more statement of transparency.
all right,
Thank you.
Councillor Duff?
Yeah, thanks, convener. Item 1123. This is a statement of transparency. I have met the applicant. I was approached by him a couple of years ago as a constituent. I also attended the demonstration display at Hillside Village Hall a couple of weeks ago, put forward by the applicant's planning staff. So that's just a declaration of transparency. It won't affect my independence if and when that should come to committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. And also Councillor Stewart?
Likewise, Councillor Duff there, I attended the meeting at Hillside Village Hall, so it's just a declaration of transparency.
Okay, thank you, Tommy. That's great. Okay, seeing no other hands, so we'll move on to agenda item 3, building warrants. And the committee is asked to note that during the period 3rd December 2022 to the 4th of February 2023, a total of 93 building warrants, 2 demolition warrants and 37 amendments to warrants have been approved, with an estimated cost of £6,216,912, and a copy of the approved warrants has been sent to every member. Is that noted?
Noted.
Thank you. Under agenda item 4, delegated decisions. Similarly, the committee is asked to note again, during the period 3rd December 22 to 4th February 2023, a total of 108 planning applications have been approved and 2 refused under the scheme of delegation to officers. And again, a list of these delegated applications have been sent to every member. Again, is that noted also?
Noted.
Noted.
Thank you. Agenda item 5 is the minute of the previous meeting of this committee on the 13th December 2022. The minutes of the previous meeting have been submitted for approval as a correct record. Is there anybody wanting to make any amendments, adjustments, or if not, are the minutes agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. Then we're on to the business of the day. Agenda item 6 is a policy update on National Planning Framework 4 and is submitted as report number 26 in week 23 by the Service Leader of Planning and Sustainable Growth. Would either Ms. Patterson or Mr. Hunter like to comment on this report? Thank you very much. Alan, over to you.
Thank you, convener. Good morning, members. As members will be aware, government has been preparing National Planning Framework 4 for some considerable period of time. It was approved by Parliament on the 11th of January this year, and it was adopted and formally published with effect from yesterday's date. So as of 9 o'clock yesterday morning, it now forms part of our statutory development plan. The document sits alongside the Angus Local Development Plan, but it does replace TAPLAN. TAPLAN no longer has any status or relevance in our decision making. NPF 4, as one would imagine, replaces NPF 3, and it also replaces Scottish planning policy. So NPF 4 now contains national planning policies, and a list of the policy coverage areas is provided at Appendix 1 to the report. So you'll see there are 33 broad topic areas, and those policies cover a wide range of areas. As I say, those policies sit alongside the policies in the Angus Local Development Plan. Legislation is also clear that if there's any incompatibility between NPF policies and the policies in our Angus Local Development Plan, the most recent policy framework, so the NPF policies, would apply in that instance. But in general terms, the policy tests, the policy coverage areas are broadly similar. There are areas where there are minor differences, but the broad coverage is similar and the tests are broadly similar. And going forward, you will see that the reports that come before committee will now refer to NPF 4 and the Angus Local Development Plan policies.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Hunter. Have any members of the committee got any questions for council officers on this report? Councillor Duff, we'll start with yourself.
Yeah, thanks, convener. And I'll be quite honest, this is a personal concern I have as chair of the Development Management Review Committee. And I think it's referenced, in the report, I think it's at 4.9. And already, I think as Mr. Hunter knows, we have had occasion to consider NPF 4. Is that going to mean that every potential appeal now will require additional information coming in with respect to NPF 4, or is it only certain ones that might be impacted? So, for example, if somebody appeals against the refusal of planning permission to put in a dormer window, that's obviously at the fairly trivial end. Would that require us to reconsider it in terms of NPF 4, or it would only be perhaps more major issues? Just because I'd like to know that before we, because that potentially can elongate the process considerably, and I'd like to know that sort of out of my own personal interest, really.
Thank you, Councillor Duff, and I understand the concern. NPF 4 does contain policies that deal with house extensions. It contains policies that are relevant to householder development. Because it now forms part of the statutory development plan, my advice would be it should be taken into account in every decision that's made, whether that's an appeal to government in relation to a planning decision, or whether it's a planning application that comes before Development Standards Committee, or indeed if it's a case that goes to Development Management Review Committee. The law requires us to make decisions in accordance with the development plan, and I think the decision maker has to be able to evidence that they've had due regard to the content of the development plan. In reality, the policies in NPF 4 that deal with householder extension will be fairly similar to the policies in the Angus Local Development Plan, but I would suggest, for the sake of demonstrating that you've had regard to that, I would suggest you should be asking for a statement from officers. That creates additional work for us, and that's an issue, obviously, at the current time, given our staff resource, but I think it's the right thing to do.
Okay, thank you,
Yes,
Mr. Hunter.
thanks, Chair. Thanks, Mr. Hunter. I think that's a very clear answer, which is what I was looking for. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Duff, as well, for the point being raised, very relevant. And also, there's no other hands up on this, so I'm assuming there's no questions. If anybody got any comments they want to make purely on this agenda item, it's merely for noting or submit for approval. No comments. Okay, so is report 2623 is submitted for approval? Is it agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. Agenda item 7 is the first of our planning applications in a field 530 metres west of North Mains of Conenside Farm near Arbroath.
Chair, sorry to interrupt. I have just noticed on item 7 that I may have a problem. It was something when I was leader, and it was probably over 2 years ago. I'd had a conversation. I just noticed one of the guests, so I will remove myself from the meeting for item 7.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Fairweather. That's so you've got declaration of interest, Mr. Fairweather, Councillor Fairweather. Yeah.
Is it a declaration convener or a statement of transparency? If it was a statement of transparency, then Councillor Fairweather could remain.
Which you prefer, Councillor Fairweather? Is it declaration of interest or a statement of transparency?
I would take it as a declaration of interest. I had a number of conversations with a particular guest, and I would feel uncomfortable staying in the meeting.
Okay, thanks for that. Okay, I see this is submitted. This is report 27/23 submitted by the Service Leader of Planning and Sustainable Growth. We'll move on. We'll let Mr. Hunter to present the slides and present the report first. Over to you, Alan.
Thank you, convener. Just check that members can see the slide on the screen.
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Great. So first application today is a planning application for buildings to accommodate 64,000 laying hens and development associated with that. Now, the site's located on land west of North Mains of Conenside Farm, addressed as Arbroath. And we see the general location of the application site on the slide before you at the current time. So we have Freecombe located around about 3 kilometres to the northeast, and Redford maybe a couple of kilometres to the south. Features to pick out, we have Leggeston Bray just on the Arbroath Brechin Road, and Conenside Crossroads located a short distance to the south of the application site, but site located roughly in the area identified by the red dot. In a little bit more detail, we see the development proposal itself and the surrounding area. Proposal is for 2 large sheds to accommodate the laying hens, a pack house located at the west end between the 2 buildings, access to the site taken from the unclassified road located to the west, so just in the area of the cursor identified on the screen at the present time. Maybe ask members to note the orange line, which is visible on the screen. This identifies the range area that would be associated with the chicken sheds themselves. Now, this is prime quality agricultural land. It's 3.1 classification in terms of the Macaulay land classification scale. The use of the range itself for keeping livestock does not require planning permission. The fields can be used for keeping cattle, pigs, sheep, even chickens, without the requirement for planning permission. That's agricultural activity. That's activity that can take place irrespective of the outcome of this planning application. So our focus is primarily on the buildings. Now we're looking at about an area covering about 1.2 hectares of prime land. Now that's a fraction of 1% of the prime land that's available in Angus. It's a development that will be used for agricultural purposes, and policy does support agricultural development in the rural area, provided amenity impacts, environmental impacts are appropriately mitigated. Apologies for this. The next slide shows the buildings themselves, substantial buildings. We have the two poultry houses, both of which are around about 24 metres wide, 110 metres long and 6.7 metres in height. So 6.7 metres to ridge height from ground level. I mentioned the pack house that would sit between the two poultry buildings, shown at the west end of the building in the bottom image that you see here, and 4 silos located again at the western end that would be used to store feed associated with the sheds themselves. Now, the silos, we're looking at about 8 to 9 metres high, so in context, that's probably similar in height to a modern 2-storey house. So silos themselves about the height of a 2-storey house, the buildings themselves slightly lower than that. Again, maybe just ask you to note we have a number of air vents and extract fans on the buildings, and issues associated with those emissions and noise levels have been considered, and we'll discuss those as we move through the slides. Just in context, this is a chicken shed at Craignathrow, so just to the southwest of Forfar. In context, Balnashanner Monument located just in the background that you can see identified by the cursor. This shed accommodates around about 32,000 hens. It's about 19 metres wide and 140 metres long, so slightly longer than what we'd be looking at North Mains, but slightly narrower. But just an image of a similar facility accommodating half the number of hens on another site in Angus. Now, I want to spend a bit of time on this slide. This slide again identifies the general location of the buildings, and the blue dots that you can perhaps pick out on the screen identify the closest residential properties. So you can see a reasonable number within the surrounding area. As I've said, a number of those are close to the range area. Property at Fairfield Mains would have curtilage that would bound the range area associated with the chickens. But as I've said, the agricultural use of the range does not in itself require planning permission. It can be used for livestock, for keeping of livestock, irrespective of the outcome of this decision. Looking at the building itself, there are a number of properties, maybe 7 properties that have curtilage within a distance of 400 metres of the buildings themselves. The closest buildings are around 300 metres or so from the closest house, I should say, round about 300 metres from the proposed chicken buildings themselves. Now, we have a significant number of objections in relation to the proposal, and that's understandable. The concerns raised by local people in relation to amenity impacts, environmental impacts, all very legitimate, all very relevant planning concerns. What we do have is environmental impact assessment in support of the application, which includes detailed assessments in relation to matters such as air quality and odour, and it includes information in relation to noise assessment and impacts on natural heritage interests, including the water environment. Now, the air quality, odour and noise assessments have been reviewed by specialist officers at SEPA. They've been reviewed by council environmental health officers, and those officers with specialist knowledge, expertise in relation to these matters are satisfied with the methodology and consider that the conclusions that have been reached are robust and provide a sound basis for determination of the planning application before you. In general terms, consultees are satisfied that there would be no unacceptable impacts and that impacts would fall within recognised tolerances, within recognised limits. And I would ask you to note the contents of the report and specifically the reference to SEPA. SEPA has considered objections to this proposal through its own consenting regime, and it's granted a pollution prevention and control permit for the installation. And that permit includes conditions that seek to deal with noise, air quality, and odour associated with the development. It includes a condition that there are no offensive odours at the boundary of the installation. Now, offensive odours, SEPA has detailed guidance in relation to that. It relates to frequency, intensity, duration, the character of the odour, and the nature of the location. So SEPA are indicating that on the basis of that, they're satisfied there should be no unacceptable impacts in relation to air quality and no significant impacts in relation to odour emission from the site. That pollution prevention control certificate has been granted by SEPA. SEPA have attached conditions to that, and SEPA will regulate that and require appropriate monitoring to be undertaken in relation to those issues. In addition to issues related to odour, air quality and noise, SEPA has also had regard to potential impact on the water environment. And as members will know, SEPA is the government agency with responsibility for the water environment. And in that regard, SEPA has looked at the hydrological information, the drainage information that's been submitted with the proposal, and it's satisfied again that the proposal has been designed to minimise potential impacts on that water environment. And just in that regard, draw your attention to the Denton Burn, located maybe just around about 900 metres or so to the 600 metres, I believe, to the north of the installation itself, maybe 300 metres or so from the range area, but around about 600 metres from the buildings that you see here. So legitimate concerns raised by those that live round about, but I suggest members should give appropriate regard to the detailed technical evidence, the technical assessment that's been undertaken in relation to the proposal, and the advice provided by the relevant experts who have reviewed the information submitted. Concerns also raised in relation to the visual impact, the landscape impact associated with the proposal. And the next image that we have shows a zone of theoretical visibility. So this is essentially a bare earth representation of where the proposal would be visible from, assuming that there are no buildings or landscape features such as trees. Now, you can perhaps make out a dotted line that goes round this area, and that's identifying an area of about 2 kilometres. So within that, you can see there is reasonably high theoretical visibility on an east-west axis, more limited visibility on a north-south axis. This is the B-class road that runs from Redford to Leggaston, and you can see approaching from the higher ground to the south, the buildings are reasonably well screened. The buildings aren't visible for a significant distance by virtue of the landform. The buildings are located on a low-lying point within the land holding to help minimise visual impact. Perhaps also make out some red dots on this image, and those identify viewpoints where more detailed assessment has been undertaken in relation to the visual impacts associated with the proposal, and we'll have a look at those in the next few slides. So the first image we have is looking down the unclassified road. Access to the site would be taken from the point that we see just on the left-hand side of the screen here. We have a property at Summerhill located just within the area identified by the cursor. Property known as Dunvegan that you can see just in the trees in this area, and Lovett Cottage property located again just in the trees that we see here. So primary views from these properties are to the south. Installation itself would be located a short distance to the east of these properties. Again, just a view that shows the access to the site. This is the garden area associated with the Summerhill property. And again, the house just located in the area behind the foliage that we see in this image. Looking in an easterly direction from this point, we have photographs and landscape images. Now, caution members, as always, these images tend to flatten out the landscape. They tend to make features look further away than they are. So if you stand in this point and look in this direction, the wind turbine will typically look larger than it appears in this image. But it gives a representation of the appearance of the development within the landscape. So you can see buildings located in this area, and if we look at the photomontage, you can see buildings would be evident from this area. So looking along the access road, distance just over 400 metres, the buildings will be obvious and present in the landscape. And similarly, as you travel down the unclassified road, you will get views of agricultural buildings sitting within an agricultural landscape. Moving round on the western boundary, this is a view. This is the Dunvegan property that I mentioned. Lovett Cottage itself located just to the left of that, not immediately visible. This is an outbuilding associated with Lovett Cottage. But Lovett Cottage, the closest property to the buildings itself. You see the wind turbine, again, just as a notable feature in the landscape. And we have, again, a photograph that shows the turbine and an impression of the buildings sitting within the landscape. Maybe just in the top photograph, you can make out the existing buildings at North Mains of Cononside, located just in the area, again, identified by the cursor. So at this point, we're looking at a separation distance in the region of 300 metres between the closest property, Lovett House, and the buildings themselves. Now, that relationship is not untypical of the relationship that exists between houses and agricultural buildings throughout rural Angus. 300 metre separation distance is not unusual. It's a distance that exists with the existing buildings at North Mains. Again, just moving around, this is the property at South Park of Gardyne. So looking roughly in a southeasterly direction, you can make out the wind turbine. You can see the landform is such that there's some screening of the building, but the roofs of the structures, the silos, certainly evident in views from this image, but not at such a level. And at the distance involved, this distance is maybe around about 650 metres, not a distance where impacts are unusual in a rural landscape. And again, you can see the visual impact associated with the property. Its impact on the landscape is not unusual for buildings of this nature. Moving round, an image from Mid Park of Gardyne, this time round about 550 metres from the house at Mid Park to the buildings themselves. And again, you can see the roof of the proposed buildings evident in the view. The silos located at the western extent, and you can see some backdrop associated with the landform to the rear. And we have the wind turbine located just at the left hand of the image. Again, highlight the limitations of these images. If you stand in that point, the wind turbine will look bigger, and consequently the farm building would look bigger, but not an impact that officers consider to be unacceptable within a rural landscape. This time we have a view looking from within the site back towards the property at South Mains of Gardyne. You can perhaps just make out the roof of the cottage at South Mains in the middle ground of this image. You can see reasonable screening along the southern extent, the southern boundary of that property. So views from the property towards the development would be mitigated by the presence of the existing landscape screening. Again, a property that's reasonably close, looking at a distance of about 350 metres between this building and the proposed buildings themselves. Moving around, again looking from within the site toward properties at Fairfield Mains, 3 properties at this general location. The curtilage of one of those properties, maybe just identified by the tree line that we see here, abuts the range area. The property that we see here is the farmhouse, and that property would have views towards the sheds. Those views would be partially screened by landscaping, but not entirely. So properties in this general location have an element of screening, but they would have views towards the buildings. The farmhouse building that we see here, maybe around about 400 metres from the house to the sheds themselves. So distances, again, that are common, that are typical within the rural area. Moving around, this is now at the eastern extent of the area, and this is a view typical from the B-class road, from the road that runs from Leggeston to Redford. You see the wind turbine, you can see the land falling away down towards the application site itself. So proposed building substantial, but located on a lower lying area of land to help minimise visual impact. So as you travel along the B-class road, you will see the buildings. You can see an impression of them here, but again, at the distances involved, typically around about 700 metres from the road to the buildings, I would suggest that the impacts are not untypical of those that are characteristic of our rural landscape. Again, just a view. This is this time from Cairnconnan Hill. This is on the road that runs from Arbroath to Letham and on to Forfar. So an elevated position, round about 1.5 kilometres to the south of the site. So the buildings you can perhaps just make out in the middle ground that you can see in this area. And again, if we move on, just in the area that you can see here. So we have existing farm buildings at North Mains of Cononside. We have properties at Cononside Farm itself, the listed building, the farmhouse. Farm building is located just to the west of this image, but the proposed buildings sitting within the context of the landscape. And again, in the wider area, reasonably well sited to minimise their wider landscape impact. I want to say a little bit about access. That's dealt with in the report in some detail. And it's a matter that's caused some concern to local residents as well. It's an area that they've expressed concern about. This image identifies on the left-hand side the proposed access to the site, which would be designed to have visibility displays that meet Roads Colleagues' requirements. It's a single carriageway road that runs from the access to the B-class road that you can perhaps just see at the bottom right of the screen. Section between this point and this point missing from this plan, but passing places proposed to be provided along the route of this access in order to improve accessibility between the B-class road and the site access itself. Now, Roads Colleagues have looked at the traffic that would be generated by the proposal. They've had regard to the fact that this is a rural road, it's single track. They've also had regard to the fact that these are working agricultural fields, and at certain times of the year, depending on the nature of the crop, harvest time, etc., there could be reasonably high volumes of traffic utilising these roads as matters stand. But the provision of passing places provides some wider benefit to all road users in the area. The volume of traffic associated with the proposal when it's operational is predicted to be relatively low and certainly within the capacity of the road itself. In addition to the provision of passing places, some improvement to visibility between the unclassified road and the B-class road itself. So again, from a road safety perspective, Roads Colleagues are satisfied this can be accommodated in a manner that would not give rise to significant adverse impact. A couple of images of the road itself. You can see it is narrow. It's lined by dry stone dikes. And again, you'll see the conditions proposed would require the dikes to be reformed in the vicinity of the passing places. So the landscape feature that's provided by the dry stone dikes would be retained. This is just looking back down the unclassified road in a northerly direction towards the site access taken along the southern boundary of the woodland area that we see here. And just looking in the opposite direction, looking up the road towards the existing group of farm buildings at Conan Sythe and the public road junction beyond. So some localised improvement on the road to facilitate improved access. Just to bring that together, this is a major development proposal and it has potential to give rise to significant environmental and amenity impacts. We've reviewed the environmental impact assessment that's been submitted with it, the associated assessments. Those have been considered by expert bodies, by SEPA, Environmental Health, Roads Colleagues, Nature Scotland. Nature Scot, has indicated it's got no objection in relation to the proposal. The concerns raised by residents are understandable, but the detailed technical evidence suggests those concerns can be addressed, have been addressed through the detailed design of the proposal and can be mitigated by conditions, both in relation to the planning permission and conditions attached to the pollution prevention and control permit that has been granted. It's an agricultural building, it's an agricultural development, it's located within a working agricultural landscape where all evidence indicates environmental and amenity impacts will not be unacceptable. The proposal complies with the development plan and is recommended for approval subject to the conditions before you. Thank you.
Thank you. As usual, thanks for that. Can I start off with members? Have any elected members any questions of Mr. Hunter following his presentation? Councillor Doran, we'll start with yourself.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a question around the conditions and around the mitigation or response from SEPA around the potential for any water pollution, whether that would be monitored all the time in the current plan, just so I'm clear on the situation, or potential or no potential of that happening with this development? Thank you.
So the planning conditions do not require monitoring of the water environment. My understanding is that SEPA would require some monitoring to be undertaken in relation to the pollution prevention and control permit it has granted.
Okay, thank you. So just to be clear, it's not covered within the mitigations, which I had seen that, but you think it's covered under the SEPA license that's been issued?
So it's dealt with in the design of the proposal. The design of the proposal and its associated drainage system is designed to comply with best available techniques, and that's the mitigation that's proposed to safeguard the water environment, and that is addressed through planning conditions. Or a planning condition that requires detail of the surface water drainage system associated with the proposal. The development will also require building warrant approval, and that building warrant will consider the design of the foul effluent for the proposal and also the surface water disposal, and the detail of the drainage system has also been considered as part of the PPC permit granted by SEPA. But SEPA, as I understand it, will require monitoring of the water environment as part of the development.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dundle.
Thanks, convener. I just wanted to ask Mr Hunter about the road amendments that we're going to be doing. Will the applicant be actually taking the payment on board for these new adaptations to the road, or will that be our roads department? Because obviously we won't be amending the road otherwise unless this development goes through. So I just wanted to know if the applicant was going to be take responsibility for paying for the road amendments. Obviously, the council budgets at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Durnell. The requirement is for the developer to undertake the works.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Donnell. I see no other hands unless anybody is it's hidden to me, but it doesn't appear to be. Okay, right. Thank you, members. Just for avoidance of doubt, understanding Order 13 of Angus Council, applicants, supporters and objectors are given the opportunity to address any points which they wish the committee to take into account in coming to its decision. Speakers will be given 5 minutes only. We have a number of speakers today, so 5 minutes only. As convener, in the interests of business efficiency, I may decide, however, to limit the length of time provided to any speaker if, for example, a point is merely being repeated. So as we have a number of respondents today on this, bear that in mind, please. If you've already heard, we have already had, as members, very considerable paperwork on this, very worthwhile reading in all of this, but we already have had sight of all of your representations. So by all means, make representations, but please, if you're starting to repeat things, I don't want to hear it 11 times or 12 times. So I will limit the length of time provided to any speaker if there is repetition. Members of the committee, as I say, has already been provided with the opportunity to read all your submissions, and thus will already be familiar with most of the points that you may raise. We'll start off with, I think, is it Mike Rushforth? Are you there, Mr. Rushforth? You might need to unmute if you, I can't, there's many people on the screen, I can't see where you are. Is Mr. Rushforth there? Nope.
Be worthwhile convener moving on. The top 5 are grouped together. It may be worthwhile moving on.
All right, we'll take, well, doesn't really matter what order we take this in. Mr. Liddell, David Liddell, are you there, Mr. Liddell? Or Miss, I'll go through some names. First person to shout out then, Mr. John Bell.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear?
Bell, thanks very much.
It's really good.
Mr. Bell, we'll start with yourself. If everybody else can mute apart from Mr. Bell, please. And Mr. Bell, you have 5 minutes to address the committee.
Good morning. I'll be reading from a pre-written statement, so here goes. Many aspects of the application directly contradict the requirements of the Angus Local Development Plan. These material objections have been pointed out in considerable detail during the consultation phase, but are simply glossed over in the report recommending approval, which cites mitigation of one sort or another, without addressing some of the fundamental issues that this application transgresses. Let me also refer councillors to section 4.2 of the summary approval document, which mentions some of the aspirations of NPF 4, which this development also falls foul of. There is clearly a distinction between appropriate and inappropriate places to locate industrial poultry units such as these, and my principal objection is about the site chosen by the applicant. It is remote applicant's principal site at North Mains of Cononsyth. It is too close to residences on sloping prime arable land in a nitrate vulnerable area, above an active aquifer which drains to a significant watercourse, and with proposed access down a narrow and unspoiled country lane which is already signposted as being unsuitable for heavy goods vehicles and which has never been subject to a habitat survey. How on earth does this make for a good choice of site which complies with all the requirements of the Angus Local Development Plan? Section 8. There are no material considerations that justify refusal of the application. This is plainly incorrect when the site is within the cordon sanitaire of 400 metres, and I'm not thinking here just about the sheds, but the free range as well, which is the case of some dwellings will be the other side of their garden fence. The original reason 2 years ago or so given for the chosen site being selected was its allegedly poor agricultural productivity. This is no more than a red herring, as we've seen no data at all to support this. Linked to this is the absence of any believable evidence about alternative sites being considered, both at Cononsyth and elsewhere. Having reviewed the applicant's submission on this, the alternatives selected for their obvious unsuitability and presented using an arbitrary scoring system intended to favour the applicant's chosen location. Neighbours have suggested, which we all believe to be far more suited to the development, and have assessed this as such using the applicant's own scoring system. A document showing this location and the rationale behind its choice has previously been sent to council as part of an objection. The applicant's farm development at North Mains of Cononsyth is already very large, and if the poultry development unit, it should do so in very close proximity to the existing buildings at North Mains of Cononsyth, in line with ALDP requirements. The applicant's agent has pointed out that Angus Council has in the past allowed two similar developments within 400 metres of dwellings. This is another red herring, as the world has moved on a lot since then, and we are now much more aware about the risks presented by such developments, with a lot of concerning evidence emerging from throughout the UK, not least of which is the increasing presence of bird flu, which seems to be walking towards it becoming a risk to human health, which, despite reassurance to the contrary, is now being found in mammals as close to home as Fife. Supporters of developments such as these point to the fact that there is no evidence of risks to either human health or the environment, when in fact all we are seeing is the absence of any interest in places and the health and environmental problems they cause. I made a Freedom of Information request to NHS Tayside a little while ago, asking if they questioned or surveyed patients with breathing disorders or other nondescript viral problems if they, the patients, felt that their condition was due to close proximity to an industry of one sort or another. In short, the reply received was that they did not. So in other words, we have no way of linking industry with illness in the general population, except perhaps in a few isolated instances. The absence of any recorded risk is not the same as the absence of risk, when there has been no attempt at correlating, for example, the emissions from such places with health problems in the nearby population. There is a much wider groundswell of public opinion against developments such as these for all sorts of reasons, and I believe it is now time for these concerns to be taken seriously. Milestone application in the history of Angus Council development standards, not only being one of the earliest decisions to be made under NPF 4, but also a clear opportunity for Council to be seen to be doing the right thing in terms of stewardship of the countryside, the people who live within it, and the environment at large. And the Council should therefore dissociate itself from toxic developments such as this one and should reject it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bell, and very much to time. Thank you for doing that. We can move on. I'm seeing there's also on the picture there's an Annie Whitehead and David Liddell.
Opportunity for members.
Oh, sorry, apologies.
Hello.
Yeah, sorry, Miss Whitehead. If you just bear with me a second. Could would members like to address any questions to Mr. Bell? Okay, not on this occasion. Okay, we'll move forward again. Ms. Whitehead, sorry to hold you up there again. If you'd like to proceed, 5 minutes. Yep. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Thank
Okay.
you.
If you'd like to take 5 minutes, please, or less to make your points.
3 years ago, I was on a regular short walk up our small lane, which is lined with honeysuckle, wild roses, wild berry bushes and trees. I met Farmer Dowell destroying a big section of an old mossy wall. I asked what he was doing, and he asked me to agree that there was always been a gateway there, and I said, no, you shouldn't be taking down the wall. He filled in a ditch in which watercress was growing and various wildlife used it, which was said to conglomerate 2 fields. After that, the applicant made this planning application, and we found that the hen sheds would be positioned exactly where the ditch had been, and the proposed road to it would go through the bell-mouthed gap in the wall he had made. Not long after that, he started to reinforce an old track that led from the gap in the wall to the site of the ditch. Work on a project isn't meant to start until you have planning permission. I've always understood alteration of watercourses needs permission, as does knocking down old walls. In any case, this is environmentally destructive and destroys the amenity of the local area. By the way, there is a perfectly good gateway into the field just a few yards up from where the gap was made. I wrote to the farmer asking them to reinstate the wall and reconsider this IPU development. There was no reinstatement of the wall. Not long after that, the applicant offered us a sack of potatoes. The landowning lobby is massive, and we're just a few small people. The answer to soil health is surely not to cover it with a raft of concretes and sheds. This is not regenerating anything. This development clashes with amenity. It is a generally peaceful environment with no odours and fresh air. It has great amenities for healthy lives. I sometimes go sea swimming at Lunham Bay. There are triple SSIs either side of the bay at Ethy Haven and Rickle Craig that could be affected by any change to levels of ammonia, antibiotics, growth hormones and phosphates, and we shouldn't be contributing to that by approving this application. I saw red squirrels last year in my garden. I saw woodcock last October. These are both rare endangered species we cannot afford to harm further. I live at Mid Park of Gardyne, which is 550 metres from the centre of the proposed sheds. I have asthma, as do some of my neighbours, which would be compromised by the emissions of particulate matter. The report doesn't mention the impact on existing health conditions. The threat to health, well-being and the environment caused by IPUs and the worry about and stress about that this development has already caused me are considerable. In summer 2021, I was signed off sick with stress partly to do with this, and in the winter of 2021, I felt so desperate. I phoned the Samaritans during the night, and this was one of the issues I was talking about. It is supposed to be that these factories are not installed less than 400 metres from a dwelling. As I said, our house is 550 metres from the centre of the proposed shed, and others of our neighbours are closer. The picture that you saw looking at South Mains, we saw their hedge. That's their own hedge. It's not a hedge provided by the farmer. If you looked left, you'd plainly see our front door without a hedge because we like the view. We've seen what's happened in Wales where these IPUs have been allowed to proliferate. The death of rivers, the loss of well-being and amenity in people's lives, the air pollution. Do you really want this mega business to take over Angus and turn it into the stinking poultry capital of Scotland? I think Angus is better than that. With the amazing soil that is here, despite decades of chemicals and destruction, it's still capable of being regenerated. Agricultural policy in existence since World War II is outdated. The last remaining opportunity here is you, the councillors. Is a massive raft of concrete and 64,000 hens in 2 flocks in any way natural, normal, sustainable, humane or environmental? Is destroying the habitat of countless microorganisms, countless small animals the right thing to do? Do you think that destroying rainforests is bad? This is exactly the same thing in our country under our noses. We have to practice what we preach. Change doesn't happen without people making a difference. Please do that by rejecting this application. Are you prepared to move by these issues raised by these objections to this application? Is your conscience prepared to be moved? Are you prepared to move to greater protection of amenity environment? There's a total understanding.
Mr. White, that's your 5 minutes. Thanks very much for that. Thank you for your time. Is Mr. Liddell there with you?
Yes.
Yeah,
Mr. Liddell, similar
sorry, I
to
had
yours-
an issue before.
Convener question.
Sorry again, I'm sorry again, I should be reminded, because you're a separate individual, again, to offer members the chance for any questions on the back of Miss Whitehead's representation. Any questions to Miss Whitehead before we move on to Mr. Liddell? Nope.
I see Tommy
No, go
Stewart.
ahead. No, sorry, you had your say, Mrs. Whitehead. Mr. Liddell, you can carry on now, please.
Yep. Okay. Well, I'm kind of editing what I'm saying so I don't repeat things.
I'll give you a minute. I'll give you a minute to let you know when your 5 minutes will be up. Okay, I'll let you know at 4 minutes.
Thank you. Well, I think this is totally against the development, Angus Council's development plan. It's I feel that intensive farming, which this project is not sustainable. It's a large-scale intervention in the environment, negatively affecting the locality and making demands on roads, the environment, and the communities living in the area. I am concerned about the cumulative effects of emissions, disease, the depth really, and the credibility of the impact assessment reports, the effect on the road that I use, the U467, and I don't feel the report 2723 takes a balanced view of my objections. I mentioned biosecurity in my last correspondence, especially regarding the disposal of wash water from contaminated clothes and vehicles. I wanted to know where that wash water would end up. Now avian flu is transferred to mammals. I would be troubled to see protected species like red squirrels who visit my trees, or the bats that live in my garage roof, disappear from my garden and surrounding area. I live in mid-park of Gardyne, which is only 550 metres from the proposed development. Biosecurity concerns were part of my objection, but I noticed not listed in the report. And it was raised as my objection. The development would not conserve, restore, or enhance biodiversity. In fact, 64,000 hens is a monoculture large enough to have a negative impact on the already fragile biodiversity in the area. The report acknowledges cumulative effects, but adheres to the development's disregard for the known cumulative effects of ammonia, particulate matter, dust, smell, noise, vibration, and light. The development will not protect, enhance water quality, soil, or geodiversity. The application also glosses over the impact on animals, insects, birds, and amphibians, especially, whose life cycles are interrupted by low levels of pollution. It also dismisses human health and well-being and has no concept of future risk like avian flu or the end of the unit's useful life. I urge the committee not to rubber stamp this proposal and say no. It is the developer's fault that this is the only plan, as an alternative proposals were dismissed by the developer and were not offered up for public consultation. I believe this is not what is meant by providing alternative proposals and is pure manipulation by the developer. Alternative plans are for planning authorities and the local community. And I would also say that I feel the green and renewable energy is also not really, is hiding, like the trees proposed around the development. It's hiding the fact that it's just not sustainable, really. And I think, renewable energy should be used to heat people's homes and not dry chicken shit.
Okay, Mr. Liddell, you have 1 more minute.
Yes. Okay. I would also say I share my reservations that putting passing places on our little road is not going to make it safer or better. This is because it totally undermines, the amount of vehicles that will be using the single track road. And I think that's really, I've reached a point of all I want to say. I mean, you know, I've summarised, and I've been in a bit of a rush there. Apologies about that.
Yeah, as I say, thank you, Mr. Lewis. As I say, members have already had all the representations in writing already anyway, so we've had a chance to look at all of these. But thank you for bringing that all up. Is there any questions for Mr. Liddell? Nope. Okay, we'll move on. I'm just looking at my screen. I'm Mr. Jake Stewart. I see you, Mr. Stewart. Again, if you'd like to unmute. Yeah, similarly again, Mr. Stewart.
Yes, yes, very much, and good morning to everyone. Unfortunately, I have audio from you, so I'm running blind as to anything that you may make. I also have a prepared report which I'd like to read to you, and it probably does cover a lot of the areas that you've already heard. But please let me proceed.
I'll give you a reminder when you've got 1 minute left. Okay.
Thank you very much, convener. Convener, councillors, thank you for the opportunity to address you, and thanks to Sarah Forsyth and the IT team for making this possible. It is appreciated. We don't have to drive long distances to make these representations. Also, I'd like to thank Jill Patterson for Report 2723. As anyone who's compiled a technical report will attest, information input is crucial. No matter how eloquently constructed, without accurate information, a report is flawed. And that goes without saying for any discipline or any. I intend to be concise with my 5 minutes. However, if you have any questions, of course, I'm happy to put on supporting documentation now or even later at a later date. Report 2723 is not a simple report, and the sheer volume of conditions attached to the conclusion confirms it's not been a straightforward application. I'd like to address 3 areas of concern. The first is the veracity of the supporting data and information by the applicant and their consultant. The second is the conclusion in section 10 that no material considerations are that justify refusal. And thirdly, I want to address the anxiety and distress caused by this application and the loss of trust and my concerns for the future biosecurity of my community. I should introduce myself. My name's Jake Stewart, and I live in Kirkden Schoolhouse, and I have done here for 30 years. And despite what Mr. Hunt, I note that none of the views from Kirkden Schoolhouse were introduced in any of the visuals that were supported from the consultant. I have clear visual sight of that field, which is about a kilometre away or 3 fields from my house. I'm very familiar with the surrounding area, and I regularly walk the unclassified road U467, and along with all the traditional footpaths with my dogs and children, as do many of the neighbours around here. I'm also the coordinator of the local neighbourhood watch scheme and the focal point for the U467 Adopt a Street programme. I do consider myself of having a large investment in this community's health and well-being. My concern over the veracity of the supporting data and information began when I reviewed the consultant's original application, and I found multiple references to Eastern Meathie. I had no idea where Eastern Meathie was, but it became obvious that the consultant had simply cut and pasted from a previous report and put it into Connorside. This gave me good reason to distrust the data or information provided, and I'd like to give you an example of how I think that that's been manipulated and misused. During the public consultation process, which by the way was a chat line via text with Kajio, the consultant, the applicant was not present on the line, by the way. I asked what other sites had been considered for the development, and I was informed by Kajio representative the site had been identified by the farmer and no alternatives were given. It was only some months later that a document on the Angus Council site that suggested that alternative sites had been considered, and a reported risk assessment supported the original placement of the site. So I reviewed the risk assessment report, and it's fairly evident that I'd been prepared in intervening weeks and was being manipulated to support the original choice. This is not a simple mistake of copy and paste. This is a deliberate attempt to produce a desired result. My second point is on the Council Report 2723 itself, the conclusion that no material considerations that justify refusal of the planning application contrary to the provisions of the development plan. I have to challenge these conclusions on the grounds that the field being proposed is prime agricultural land. And it states in PV20 that it can only be used if there are small scale and directly related to the rural business. This development is not small scale, despite what others have been saying. 1.2 meters, 1.2 hectares standing is a large area. If it was anywhere else, you would consider a very large scale development. And in my opinion, industrial poultry units are not directly related to arable farming either. I really have to stress that this seems to be a way of industrializing the countryside, and I am certainly not happy about that.
Mr. Street, we have 1 more minute, I'm afraid. That's all.
Okay, well, I'm going to chalk on to my last point then, if I may, which is about the so councillors, the understanding of risk in 2023 is different now than it was in pre-COVID, and when current sign dangerous these intensive farms will eventually come down into planning procedures, future generations are going to look back and wonder why on earth these applications were even considered. The biosecurity of these premises is of utmost importance, and it's almost casually dismissed as someone else's problem. Please, let's follow the science as we did during the COVID period and not simply rely on old rules and procedures. Judgment is your prerogative, councillors. Please use it. Councillors, if you support this application, you will be simply promoting the profit of a farmer above the considerations of myself and my neighbours and our environmental safety. If, however, you reject the application or defer it to full council for full screening, it will ensure that the future applications of this nature are made in good faith and information supplied stands up to scrutiny. We will save everyone a lot of effort and anxiety in the future, and hopefully applications like this won't take 2.5 years to process.
I have to finish you there, I'm afraid. Sorry, that's the time.
I'm finished.
Thanks for the time. Again, members, to keep the business moving, are there any questions for Mr. Stewart? No. Okay. Another respondent, Miss Phyllis Jolly. You're there, Miss Jolly. I see you're on screen. If you'd like to go ahead, please. Again, maximum 5 minutes, and I'll give you a minute's notice of when you've got your last minute. Is that okay?
Oh, good morning, Councillor.
Can hear you fine, thank you.
Good, thank you. Today's Courier reports on this application, and the article closed with a quote from the applicant's agent. We have confidence that members will support a local farmer proactively investing in his family business. Very good. I have confidence that members will take a balanced approach and give equal weight to their duty towards all of their constituents. The applicant runs a successful business with several income streams, and a look at the planning application property record shows no less than 11 planning applications lodged against North Mains of Cononside. Their neighbours, the local community, myself included, have been generally supportive of all this development at North Cononside, so one must ask, why has this support gone? Nearly 200 objections. I participated in the earlier online consultation, and I asked for information on the merits and otherwise of alternative sites, which ruled them out to the extent that this development is the best on offer, yet it is less than 400 metres from 8 existing family homes. They call it a cordon sanitaire for good reason, as a departure from the 400-metre rule. LDP Policy 9B says, proposals on greenfield sites will not be supported unless the site has been allocated for development, it hasn't, or the proposal is explicitly supported by policies in the LDP. I couldn't find any explicit support. The officer's report addresses the new NPF 4 Policy 14, comparing it to the existing Rural Development Policy 20. This says there is a requirement for development in rural areas to be suitably scaled, sited and designed in keeping with the character of the area. Today, I would support this farming family, if the shed location was reversed. Put it at the top end of the site as far as possible away from private, unconnected family homes, and then the access would be off the B961 road, the same as all the development on the rest of the farm. The range area would be the same, but there would also be a reduced risk of flooding from surface runoff reaching the Vinnie Water. Now, the reason I mention flooding is because my house was on STV News back of Letham. A mudslide from a neighbouring farm uphill from us not only travelled some distance and dumped tons of mud on our doorstep, but that also went into the Vinnie Water, which is also on our doorstep. We are getting more extreme weather, and it is our responsibility to make sure that new development can cope with it. At the early stages, the Roads Department made comment regarding visibility displays at the junction of the unclassified road with the main road. This junction is a killer. I hope all of you have been up and down the area to see this for yourselves. The plans don't really do it justice. The plan of proposed passing places stops short of including the tight bends on the main road at the junction. It is the main road that needs to have the bends flattened out to mitigate risk to users from increased traffic leaving and entering the unclassified road. Move the sheds close to the existing mass
you've got 1 more minute, that's all.
and centre of the farm will remove the need for any road alterations. I see no reason that this can't be done. This application must be rejected because it does not meet the criteria for LP Policy 9 and NPF Policy 14. The sheds are not in keeping with the character of the area. There is no little red tractor working on today's farms. They're huge industrial beasts the size of your house. An urban housing estate would net its doorstep, and rural householders deserve no less. For me, traffic impact on Summerhill House and the safety of all road users at the Bad Bend Junction is the problem. The solution is move the sheds close to the other sheds. There's no other livestock. The only explanation given is it doesn't suit their operational reasons. That's not good enough. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Ms Jolly, and again, thank you for keeping to time. Members, have anybody got any questions for Ms Jolly? No? Okay, I'll move ahead. I see Mr Rushforth. I see you on screen, Mr Rushforth. Can I just confirm, Mr Rushforth, do you have other people with you?
I do. I've got who wish to speak.
Okay, could you give me their names?
Four.
You're four.
I've got
okay.
my wife,
Right.
Morag Malcolm. I've got Val McMillan, neighbour near us.
Yep.
Ian Grant.
Yep.
And John Skelton.
And Morag Malcolm as well, yeah?
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right, we'll start with yourself, Mr Rushforth, again. Maximum 5 minutes. If you'd like to proceed.
Yes, thank you. Mr Convener, I did ask if a slide could be shown. I've got 2 slides which I would like to show.
Yes, we're aware of them. We can bring them up.
I appreciate that.
Please bear with us.
This first slide shows the view from the U467.
Yes, Mr Rushforth, just hold on a second till we get the slides up,
Oh,
please.
right. Okay.
We are aware, we have got them, we just need to get them loaded, that's all.
Yeah. Perhaps while you're loading them, I could say I live at Summerhill House, which is situated approximately 2 metres from the access road, which has been described to the site. This is a view looking northeast from the U467, the unnamed road. And you'll see there are no farm buildings in this view. This is a very popular viewpoint. And the next slide. This shows the area where the buildings will be incorporated. We asked for this area to be modelled in the viewpoints, but that request was in council and the applicant. I would like to address issues of location, unreliability of data presented, and the fact that this cannot be regarded as sustainable development. In the report, it is claimed modelling shows there is no risk to nearby residents, and therefore Scottish Government guidelines can be ignored regarding a cordon sanitaire. You may be satisfied with the methodology used, but we cannot trust the quality of the inputs used in the modelling. This applicant has previously submitted documents containing unreliable information. For example, the first attempt at an environment assessment used data from a weather station 50 miles away in central Perthshire to model toxic pollution from this site close to the North Sea. Also, the figures used for manure generation per hen are significantly lower than generalist values. In my opinion, this will seriously impact the modelling calculations for particulates and odour in a manner favourable to the applicant. So perhaps you can understand why we local residents are sceptical when we are told that their modelling shows that there is no serious risk to us. Recent research in the Netherlands has detected particles coated with Staphylococcus bacteria transported 400 metres from hen sheds as bioaerosols. The concentration of these bioaerosols will be increased if the manure is dried, as described in this application, thereby significantly increasing the volume of dust and the associated health risk. This is why the Scottish Government recommends that you don't build these industrial units in the vicinity of residential housing. There will always be an element of uncertainty in the data and the health risks involved. And I believe that this model data is potentially safe, even if the methodology is judged satisfactory. On sustainability, a study commissioned by the British Free Range Egg Producers Association has reported that intensive poultry units of this size produced 4.3 million kilos per annum of greenhouse gas emissions, and this was using clean energy sources such as wind and solar. This present application will use energy from wood chip boilers, which is now recognised as being non-sustainable energy and in itself will be a major source of particulate pollution. Using grain produced on the farm in the feedstuff will have a minimal impact on this carbon footprint because a significant proportion of the feedstuff required will still have to be imported.
One more minute.
Right, thank you. Regarding MPF4, yes, it is diversification of an existing rural business, but it cuts right across Policy 5 and totally fails to meet the requirements for developments on prime agricultural land. Excuse me. The Soil Association, Friends of the Earth, Hutton Institute all recognise that growing grain to feed to animals to produce animal-based protein is not sustainable, and the future lies in farmers producing more plant-based protein. This would help satisfy the increasing demand for vegan products and at the same time would improve soil quality and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. This would fit well with Angus Council's definition of sustainable development. And I'll remind you, that is development which meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Russell, again for your time. Members, any questions for Mr. Russell? No. As you have people with you, Mr. Russell, can I ask, is it Morag Malcolm would like to go next?
Good morning.
Yourself, I'll give you a minute's warning when it's time to wrap up. So I'd like to kick off for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I've lived at Summerhill House for over 15 years. I'm now retired and enjoy working in our garden. The building of these sheds would seriously affect my amenity because the main access track to the proposed site runs within 2 metres of the boundary of our property. There would be substantial increased traffic noise and dust pollution. The access track to the sheds was created by the applicant without planning permission, but the report says that the applicant can apply for retrospective planning permission. This means that he's avoided wildlife surveys, the consideration of destruction of dry stone walls, and consideration of my amenity. This cannot be acceptable, especially when the applicant has a history of carrying out works and then making retrospective planning applications. Despite the fact that multiple residential properties would be affected adversely by the development, the applicant has failed to make any serious attempt to propose alternative sites or redesign the existing site so that it would be less impactful on residents by using an access route direct to the main road, the B9. I'm very surprised and disappointed that the council has failed to press for the more obvious alternative proposal. Contrary to claims in the report, this development would reduce biodiversity in our area. The destruction of the dry stone walls and the erection of long lengths of fencing would destroy the nature corridors which connect woodland and shrubland essential to wildlife development in our area. This is contrary to NPF4 Policy 6, which states in paragraph 3, and I quote, "Development proposals will not be supported where they will result in fragmenting or severing woodland habitats. No mitigation measures have been identified by the applicant. The security lighting would be to the detriment of wildlife, for example, bats, night birds and insects living in the area. See P5, PV6 in the local development plan. The increased traffic on country roads necessitated by this project is at odds with the Angus Council's plans, declared intention to deliver its programme safer routes, supported by Scottish Government funding, ALDPDS4. This is a popular recreational route. At present, the speed of traffic on the U467 is restricted by the fact that it is a single carriageway with informal passing places. The creation of a number of laybys would permit traffic to travel at higher speeds, increasing the risk to the many road users such as horse riders. Infrequent laybys would be of little value to these vulnerable users facing increased volumes of traffic. Will the traffic give way to these road users as required by the most recent highway code? I have major concerns about the entire application. The applicant is already operating multiple biofuel plants, which developing knowledge shows are harmful to the environment, and would be replacing prime agricultural land with an industrial mega farm that can never be considered environmentally desirable. In the light of increased knowledge about the thoughtless or ignorant actions of humans, Angus Council must consider seriously the negative impact of such a development on climate change and the mental and physical health of residents. I'm particularly concerned by the statement in section 9 of the report that my human rights, physical and mental health, are less important than the rights of the applicant to build an industrial complex in the countryside, which, it is known, will have a negative impact on the environment.
One more minute.
And many residents with zero benefit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, members, again, any questions for Okay, thank you. Is Mr.
Good morning.
Mr. Grant, good morning. I'll just repeat the same again, Mr. Grant. I'll give you 5 minutes maximum, and I'll let you know when you're at 4 minutes.
Thank you.
Please proceed.
Most of my points have been covered either by councillors or the people complaining. I've lived here in this habitat for 50 years, and on the U467, my point is the U, it gives us an indication as to the nature of the roadway. It is unclassified, a single track lane following field boundaries, featuring extensive dry stone walls, which are protected, I think. At the very outset, we were informed by the applicant's agent, Cogio, that other sites and entrances were considered, but this was the model which was approved and on offer. We've never had any chance to review or look at any of these alternatives. Given the size of the development, it seems very inappropriate that this should go ahead. Following one of the points made, I think it was from Ms. Jolly in Latham, that the applicant has the farm at North Mains of Cononside, which copes with a purpose-built entry and exit for its GVs, heavy farm machinery, and all the wood chip business potato storage, biomass boilers that he has there. It seems to me crazy that we should be looking at taking away the amenity a few hundred metres down the way on a much safer road with no accidents being reported there, where there are up at the entry of the small lane on which we live. I can't understand. One of my major points was I had corresponded earlier with Mr. A. Barnes, who was the team leader for the traffics and the road transportation. That was as far back as 3 years. That was on the 7th of December 2020. I was asking for guidance on how this to be paid for. He did assure me that if the plans were approved, the applicant would be responsible for the expense, which will be considerable, and how the difference of going into this ready-made roadway, I can't understand the logic in it. The applicant obviously expects the proposal will go through, as going back 3 years or more, he has made preparations to the site. The removal of the dry stone roadway was put in, ditches have been covered, etc. The benefit, I feel, if the other alternative entry or exit was used, if it does get passed indeed, is it just, again, which many of the people have said, this road is extensively used by recreational walkers, bikers, all sorts of things. It's a much safer habitat.
1 more minute,
Thank you.
Grant, please.
I'm deeply disappointed how this application has been conducted right from the very start. We've had very, very scant information from Cogio. It's only been the bare minimum in a one-way traffic system as far as I see. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Again, ask the members again, any questions, Mr. Grant? Nope, not seeing any hands. In that case, we can move on to, I think, Mr. John Skilton. If you're there, Mr. Skilton. Just like to unmute yourself, Mr. Skilton. Oh, you're still muted, Mr. Skilton.
Oh, right.
Thank you.
That's a good start. Councillors, thank you for the chance to speak on the proposed factory application. I live at Queenswood Cottage, DD82SR, in close proximity to the above, and I'm very troubled about the increased CO2 and other noxious substances which would result from this industrial unit. The increased traffic down a single track farm lane known as the U467 from the bend in the main road, the B961, known locally as an accident black spot. The destruction of the ancient dry stone dikes, which are a habitat for numerous species of invertebrates, small mammals and reptiles. Since the proposal of this intensive poultry factory, a lot has changed. We now have the problem of avian flu, of which the outcome and have yet to be fully analysed. So since the proposed factory farm was thought up, a lot has changed. I think a need for urgent further investigation regarding the above problems is on the cards. I also worry about the drainage from the units put in the Denton Burn, a stretch of which runs through my garden, plus the pollution of my well. The distribution of the massive manure and the drying of the said manure is also a great worry. This is a lovely area of Angus countryside, and with the intensive factory farm, it's being turned into an industrial site. With the free-range eggs now a thing of the past due to avian flu, why can't this and other units be on a brownfield industrial land? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Skilton. Again. Any members' questions? No, then I think we have one other person at the table there. Is it Valerie McMillan? Ms. McMillan, if you'd like to take your place.
Good morning.
Good morning. Again, I'll give you 5 minutes, Ms. McMillan, and let you know after 4. So carry on.
Okay. I reside at Summerhill Cottage, where I've lived for 16 years. The bottom of my garden is diagonally opposite to the entrance to the proposed development, just to give you an idea of where I stay. The area designated for the hens' free-range expanse is prone to flooding, thus allowing contaminated water runoff, which will include fecal matter from the hens to find its way into the watercourses in the area. I am particularly concerned about this as my water supply comes from a well in the area. This all relates to the ALDP policy PV14 water quality, which requires that development proposals which do not maintain or enhance the water environment will not be supported. It also goes on to say that the development proposals must not pollute surface or underground water. How is this to be mitigated? In view of the risks involved, will routine testing be carried out on the wells in the area, and who will be responsible for this? The U467 is a narrow country road wide enough for single vehicles, and therefore 2 cars could pass with extreme care. This would not be the case with large articulated lorries and associated vehicles. This would cause congestion and the inability to access properties, causing dangerous situations on an ongoing basis. Farm vehicles do use the road, usually during harvest times, which is only temporary. With this proposed facility in the area, it would produce heavy traffic on a more permanent basis all year round. Many local residents walk either themselves or with their dogs. Horse riders use this road also, and cyclists. I am concerned that with the increase in traffic, there may be a risk as the road is only very narrow and the grass verges are not always accessible to avoid traffic. The proposed laybys will be of limited benefit to these vulnerable road users unless traffic is prepared to stop to allow them to reach these safe havens, thus creating a loss of amenity. Hens produce voluminous amounts of fecal matter and would be subject to current waste management legislation. All manure must either be stored, transported from site or used on surrounding farmland. There will be far more crops. A large amount of this waste would be on the free-range areas close to nearby dwellings, creating a health hazard. Waste management proposals are not clear regarding this. This proposed facility would produce high levels of pollutants into the atmosphere. How will this be managed? Who can we look to for this? As there are residential properties located close to this proposed development, what assurances do we local residents have as they have chosen to build close to our properties? There should be continuous monitoring to assure residents. Thank you very much.
Sorry, councillor, we can't hear you.
Apologies, that's my mistake. I muted myself. Yeah, Mr. Rustforth, would you mind muting your microphone for your group? Do we have Susan Burness on the call?
Yes, we do.
Oh, thank you, Miss Mother. I see you now. Thanks very much. Again, same goes to yourself, Miss Burness. You can have 5 minutes, and I'll give you a minute's warning when you to wrap up. Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you. So we have the bungalow at Fairfield Mains and also the cottage at Fairfield Mains. And I think it's often skirted around the fact that there's 3 properties at Fairfield Mains, and it always seems to be just lumped in as one property. But there's 3 houses there that will be bounded by that development. So coming from a farming background, I fully understand the desire to diversify the existing business, especially with the farmer having 3 sons wanting to take over. However, given that this development is wholly inappropriate for the selected location, I've no alternative but to object to the application. In my opinion, the site is not suitable for the location of an intensive farming unit. There are several residential properties, as noted, in close proximity to the site. The development will significantly adversely affect the quality of life for local residents due to noise, odour and light pollution. This is a beautiful part of Angus. I think the pictures don't do justice to the fact that the views from this location are superb, meaning it's often the very popular with walkers. And the proposed development is located directly over the existing path network. The access road is noticed is unsuitable for heavy vehicles. The site selection does not respect the field boundary pattern as required in the local plan. The site selection does not by operational factors such as the need for security, supervision, road access, the source of water supplies, drainage, or the proximity to services. It's not associated with an existing building group. The application Consyth Farm Limited, including the North Means of Consyth and Consyth Farm. The amalgamation of separate farms generally results in the centralisation of farming activities within a single unit. However, in this case, the applicant is proposing to add an additional range of agricultural buildings in a completely new location. There is a cumulative effect of the landscape with 3 separate ranges of agricultural buildings servicing what is now a single farm unit. The location of the development is remote from the other farm buildings, and 24-hour supervision as required with livestock facility. We suggest that this is likely to result in future expansion at this location. Free-range chickens require well-drained soil, not the heavy clay soil that's there. The land proposed for the chicken run is clay soil which easily becomes waterlogged. This is compounded by panning in the pasture where the chickens compact the top few inches of soil. Wet conditions result in illness, foot problems, fungus, mould and respiratory issues with the chickens. Due to the clay soil, additional areas of hard standing will be required adjacent to the building to prevent the birds tracking in wet mud into the hen house. Contaminated runoff from these areas risk pollution, local water courses. Land ideal for crop production. As anybody from the local area knows, this is the golden triangle of agricultural land, the best agricultural land in Scotland and Angus, as goes with the high prices of agricultural land paid for the very fact it's great agricultural land. And it's totally unsuitable, as noted before, for free-range chickens, which would do much better in sandy soil near the coast.
One more minute, please, Ms. Burness.
The high metal fences that's going to be erected around the residential developments will also have a visual impact over and above the sheds. With regards to flood risk, this area, the Fairfield Mains, was originally called the Ditch of Consyth. All the drainage runs into the ditches that comes down through and round the farm. It only changed its name to Fairfield Mains recently when my father built the bungalow. So the Ditch of Consyth is called that for a purpose. They are looking at using attenuation because they can't do infiltration for the drainage, and the size of pond that would be required, given that water always lies in this area can lie there right over the winter period. The size of an attenuation pond in order to mitigate the additional rainfall of the size of a football pitch would be absolutely massive. And the size of this
I'm going to have to call you off there, Ms. Burness. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to call you off there. You've had your 5 minutes like everybody else has.
You're mute, David.
Sorry, apologies. Have any questions, members, for Ms. Burness? No, thank you, Ms. Burness, for your time. These are all the objectors who are registered to speak today. We also have the applicant and his agent. The applicant is Mr. Angus Dowell and the agent is Mr. Dave Anderson. Again, can allow each of them 5 minutes. Maybe you'd like to address some of the issues you've heard, gentlemen, this morning. We'll start perhaps Mr. Dowell, or if you want to defer to Mr. Anderson, you can. Mr. Dowell or Mr. Anderson?
Yes, good morning. I'm Angus Dowell, a director of Cornsouth Farms and the next generation of our family farm. I'm a keen young farmer looking to push on this industry and make our business model more sustainable. This development fits perfectly into our current farming system, which is predominantly arable. The grain produced will provide feed for the hens, and the manure will provide fertiliser for the grain. Also, renewable wind and solar power will provide enough electricity to run the operation, which creates a circular economy whereby the farm complements the hens and vice versa. Eggs are increasingly in demand with consumption on the rise. I saw a gap in the market where as cage hens will no longer be sold in the supermarket by 2025, thus leaving a shortage of free-range eggs to fill that deficit. With the rules of supply and demand, the future of free-range eggs looks bright. We need to see more British producers to meet this demand in order to prevent imports of eggs from Europe, for example, where bird welfare standards are far less desirable than our own. Avian flu, of course, is an issue, but one as an industry we must overcome. With higher levels of biosecurity, this will be minimised as much as possible. New vaccines are being developed with better bird genetics. Every aspect of this development has been thought out carefully, designed in order to minimise any impact on the surrounding area. There has been a huge amount of money and time invested into getting everything ready for planning. I hope you can see the value in this project and can offer your support. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Dowell, thank you for that. Mr. Anderson, would you like to, I can offer you some time if you'd like to add anything to what Mr. Dowell has said or address any of the points you've heard this morning?
Yes, thank you, Convener. Just a brief statement from myself. My name is Dave Anderson. I'm Director of COGEO. We're agents for the planning application and we compile the environmental impact assessment for the development. We'd like to acknowledge there's been a lot of strong emotive reactions to the proposal. It's a reaction that we do sympathise with, as there's a lot of misinformation and conjecture associated with the potential impact on the environment. Whilst we believe the merits and sustainability of the development are clearly reflected in the lack of objection from any consultees and the recommendation of approval from the planning officers, we appreciate there's a lot of material linked to the sheds. It's very technical and specific to this type of development. We'd welcome questions from members and would be more than happy to provide clarity to appease any concerns you have over the project. We're absolutely certain that the proposal meets all development policies, both nationally and locally, and we'd invite members to support the application, which will be an important and sustainable development for Cornsouth Farm, the rural Angus economy now and in the future.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Anderson. Right, we go to questions from members, and I see some hands are moving up already. This is questions for the applicant or the applicant's agent. So if you're ready, gentlemen, to respond. The first question is from Councillor Durno. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Anderson. The question I want to ask is, a lot of the objective persons have said that there's a more suitable site nearer a better road. Why didn't you actually look at this other site if the road was more accessible?
I'll answer that. Yeah, okay. Thank you for the question, Councillor Durno. To be perfectly honest, we did. We considered there's a huge number of factors we need to consider when we're looking at the placement of the hen sheds. We've got some of the planning considerations based around odour and noise, hydrology, one of them, landscape visual impact, but we're also constrained by the actual operation of the development itself. We need to consider things such as the free range requirements from the Scottish Government. In order to get the right ranging, we have to have a look at all of the different competing factors around the industry for laying hens, as well as the environmental considerations. We've looked at various sites across the farm. We need to be able to get water, electricity. We need to make sure it's suitable for foul sewage. We need to make sure it's suitable for grey water drainage. All of these competing factors did come into the decision making. We have to get these balances right. One of the things we did look at was different orientation of the sheds, but operationally it just wouldn't work. We want to make sure that they're orientated in a way to make sure we can balance out all these factors and, most importantly, protect amenity.
because that's something operationally we can't have compromised, because we can't have the sheds being under undue scrutiny or being limited in terms of the operational capacity. It was a consideration. We did look at a number of other sites right across the entire land holding at Conansythe, but the proposal before you today is the only one that balances out all the planning and environmental factors as well as the operational factors that go along with it. I would also highlight that it's very common for these types of developments to have their own dedicated access. We work on a number of these across the UK, and they've all got a dedicated access point, partly for biosecurity, partly for operational reasons, because it can be, you know, depending on the farm uses, can end up in conflict with other operations on the site. So we try to present that as best as we possibly can, as clear as we possibly can throughout the reporting, to make that very explicit that there have been, you know, it's been designed with a huge amount of effort and purpose put in behind it there. Hopefully that answers your point, but if there's anything I can clarify further, please let me know.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, happy with that, Mr. Councillor Dunno. Okay, Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thanks, convener. I wanted to ask the applicant and his agent. I mean, Mr. Hunter in his description of the planning application referred to the Macaulay land use status, which I think he quoted as 3.1. My understanding that's the sort of lowest grade of arable land before we get into land that's not suitable for arable land. Can I just ask the applicants about that? Because that obviously is one of the criticisms from objectors, that you are using prime agricultural land for a purpose that perhaps you could have put this facility on less good land. And I just want to know what your thoughts on that are. Thank you.
Yeah. So most of our land on that on our holding is grade 2, but that area is grade 3, and we do see reduced yields up to half a ton an acre or 2.5 ton a hectare in some cases. So yeah, it's tough to work, and the site where the sheds actually go haven't had anything cropped in there for many years. So that was the reason for another reason for picking that site.
And just to further clarify, Councillor Duff, that your classification is correct. 3.2 would be considered the lower grade. So that there's been quite a lot of talk about that recently in regards to solar development in England and the land classifications. But usually 1 and 2 are the real prime agricultural land classifications.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Duff?
Yeah, thanks, convener. I'm sure the farming experts on the committee will have their own, maybe give us their thoughts.
Understand that, yeah. Speaking of such, Councillor Brays.
Yes, thanks, convener. Well, I had 2 questions, and one was raised by Councillor Dunno. I think I would like later in the meeting, perhaps, some further advice from Mr. Hunter on that, on the location. But yeah, when it comes to the quality of the land, I've never heard that area described as the Golden Triangle, and while it's very good land, I'm sure it's certainly not the best land in Angus or in Scotland.
Isn't it? So your question, there's no questions you want to put, Councillor Brays, no?
Well, yes, you could maybe answer that a wee bit more fully about the quality of the land, if you could, please.
Mr. Dowell, Mr. Hanson.
Sorry, in terms of what? Sorry, Councillor Brays. Specific information you'd like?
Well, is it locally known as the Golden Triangle, and is it the best land in the area?
The famous Golden Mile or Golden Triangle is 4 miles from us, 4 or 5 miles from us, and it is on the coast, and it'll be grade 1 land. It is probably the best land in Scotland, if not the UK. some might say. We are far from that. We've got higher rainfall, more stones. We're later. You know, there's a lot of factors that come into it, and that's why it's graded at 3.3132.
And you're also approximately 350 odd feet above sea level.
Yes.
Thank you very much for that clarification.
Thank you again, Councillor Brace. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. And if I could ask Mr. Anderson and Mr. McDowell, good morning, gentlemen. Could I maybe ask, in terms of the single track road, and having lived many years with a single track road, I've got a lot of experience of one. I suppose I really need you to answer me how much mitigation you'd be given to ameliorate the damage to the road, given the hefty traffic that there would be on that for a sustainable time.
So I would actually sort of countenance that there isn't actually a huge amount of traffic associated with the operation of the development. Obviously, the passing places are something we discussed with the roads as a sensible way of upgrading the small section of road that will link the B road into the start of the development. But actually, in terms of the operational traffic, the HGV movements are very limited. Generally, it's basically a delivery of feed and egg collections for HGVs. Everything else, it's sort of standard vehicles, cars and vans for workers coming to and from the site. The birds are actually only moved on and off the site every 60 weeks, which again will be HGVs. But the overall impact on the road is relatively low. There's appropriate conditions being proposed as part of the potential approval of the application to ensure the passing place is up to correct standard and everything like that. But for the overall operation, we think it'll be a relatively low impact on the roads itself.
Thank you very much. Thank you, convener, and thank you, gentlemen.
Can't thank you, Councillor Clark. There's okay. I was about to come in myself, but Councillor Gold, do you want to raise a question, or I saw your hand? No. Okay. If I can ask myself, Mr. Anderson, Mr. Dowell, Ms. Burness raised a point about the soil being largely clay soil and not being suitable to hens. Could you respond to that, please?
I would say it is ideal for hens. I mean, it is typically wetter soil, so having grass on that all year round will help filter that water through with the root system that the grass creates. I would say it's probably not ideal ground for arable for the NVZ issues of runoff with nitrogen, whereas the grass will hold that nitrogen in the land and help filter the water through. So I think this is of betterment to the land.
Okay.
And if I could expand on that as well, Councillor Cheap, is just as part of the requirements for the free-range birds, there's also extensive woodland planting proposed in and around the sheds as well, further aerate the soil, further increase the percolation and improvement in general soil quality as well as biodiversity. The overall soil structure will be improved over time with a lower intensity agricultural use as well. So the overall benefit from change from agriculture to a more natural grazed and partially wooded environment will have a net benefit overall and improve the soil structure and quality.
Okay, thanks very much, gentlemen. I don't see any other hands for questions. I'm going to ask now for comments from members. If any hands want to go up for members to make comments on this. First one, okay, we're starting to go. First of all, we'll start with Councillor Gall. You were first this time, so please go ahead with your comment.
Thank you, convener. There's around this report, and I think we need to be really serious about what we're actually asking. food security in the UK is at 60%, and just going off the NFU's latest figures, cage hen production is supposed to be phased out in 2025, yet free-range eggs only make up 70% of the current available supply. So what are we asking here? Are we looking at this that we don't expand or we don't encourage development, and we take the risk that we either have a lack of supply of eggs or we end up taking it from poor quality importing? I think we've also got to realise that this has been a location, as the applicants described, the poorest part of the farm. It makes sense to use this. We need to use the guidelines that we've been given, and we need to look at the expert knowledge that the air quality, noise, odour has all been satisfied by experts. And we are, as councillors, we are not experts. We have to look at the information that we're given, and SEPA has said that they are content with the mitigations that are in place. And just another thing that's really, really important, fertiliser has been in the news a huge amount, and the ability to possibly use the litter as fertiliser is huge. And when the Ukraine war started, nitrate fertiliser went from £280 to £1,000 in some cases. And where there can be a kind of sustainable regenerative issue where litter can be used on the land and possibly sold to neighbouring land, it is a huge factor. And I think it's really important. Farming is supposed to be reducing our emissions by 25% by 2030, and this goes a long step to this. So, I think we need to be very, very encouraging of development in our local area, and because food security is so important. And I think we need to be really conscious of that and supporting projects like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gall. Councillor Breeze.
Well, yes, thank you. As far as I understand it, we have to consider the application that is before us and not any hypothetical application on a different piece of the farm. This is what the applicant has applied for, and we've to make the decision. And Councillor Gall has pointed out correctly that all the regulatory bodies, statutory consultees, etc., are satisfied and there's mitigations in place. I think that the conditions attached to this application are very robust. And I would also say that despite this being a fairly large-scale application, it's important to remember that this is a farmer applying for permission to do farming on farmland. That's what it amounts to. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Breeze. We'll move on to Councillor Dunno.
Yeah, thanks, convener. I do have sympathy with farmers at the moment. Farm prices are, food prices are horrendous, and everybody is hoping to, try and replace all the food that we've lost coming from Brexit. But we do have to take into consideration as well that people's lives matter as well. And there's been an awful lot of objectors about this. People have went out of their way to make a big effort to scrutinise this application. And I do wonder if there was a more proposed site, we do have to look at that as well, because people do matter, as well as food production. People do matter, which is, I think it should be taken into consideration, that the amount of objectors that are on this planning application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dunno. But as was just mentioned, we're looking at this application itself at the moment in the site. Councillor Nicholl.
Thank you, convener. In these hard economic times, it's great to see farmers being able to diversify. This state-of-the-art egg production unit, with all its latest ventilation and equipment, will give excellent animal husbandry and welfare to the birds. I think it's better to have a food produced locally in the heart of Angus. This project will either secure jobs or create more jobs. I would agree with the officers on this project. Thank you.
Councillor Nicholl, thanks very much for that. Councillor Duff, please.
Yeah, thanks, convener. Obviously, committee members who have much greater knowledge of agriculture than myself, but for my penny's worth is that Angus is a rural area, it's an agricultural area, and this is an agricultural business that wants to diversify and sustain their business, and we should be, as a council, wanting to support that. I note there's an objection. That's inevitable given the size of the scheme, but I think we have to look at the application, have to look at the overall the economy. I hadn't recognised the issue with caged hens, so clearly there's a need for more free range hens if we want to eat eggs. So you know, I eat eggs, so I've got a vested interest there, I suppose. So yeah, I think this is a good application from an Angus business that wants to diversify, and I'm certainly supporting it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillor Dornan.
Yeah, thank you. Give credit to the information that has been shared by the objectors and how informative that is around all the different aspects of this. It is a complicated proposal put forward, but as councillors we also have to make sure we're questioning the experts that feed in to give us the information about that site as well. So I just wanted to mention that, and that's it. Thanks.
Right, thank you, Councillor Doran. Councillor Clark, late comment.
Sorry, well, actually, this is a hard one, convener. One of the hardest I've ever sat in on. And I'm just wondering, I suppose it's a comment, but really a question as well, that shouldn't this go to full council? And I would seek a seconder on that.
Before we do that, can I bring in Mr. Hunter? And would that,
me too.
or well, just to advise on that, as whether it's appropriate that should go to full council.
I can respond to that.
Go ahead.
Councillor Clark, in terms of our standing orders, standing order 40, if I could refer you to standing order 40 and then item 4, where there is actually provision for other items to be referred to council, that does not apply to any committee that's acting in a quasi-judicial manner.
Okay, I have to accept that. I've tried. Thanks, convener.
Thanks, Councillor Clark. I just looking through standing orders earlier, and I couldn't remember the right wording of that. Thanks very much for that. Okay, there doesn't seem to be any other comments here. I'd just like to, as convener, kind of, if you like, sum up on this one, because there's been clearly a lot of emotion. That I respect the number of objectors and also the applicants and people speaking and who have written actually in favour also. But just to sum up, if you could give me a few minutes, Cononside Farms here quite clearly are looking to diversify, as other councillors have said, their business for a number of valid reasons. Diversification into egg production not only provides an alternative revenue stream independent of the farm's traditional interests, but it also improves the sustainability and viability of the farm's ongoing operations. As it was mentioned by them, the litter produced by the hens will be reused on the farm as fertiliser. Currently, it's in-hauled into the farm from external suppliers. The hens will be fed with cereal grown on the site, as well as utilising energy from the firm's renewable and sustainable sources to power the units. And this reduces the cost of the business, obviously, while reducing the carbon emissions from transport. The additional manure will be sold to the market as well. So it does seem cyclical to me. However, that said, concerns raised by those that live in the vicinity of the site regarding impact on amenity are understandable, entirely understandable, and we've had good submissions. I thank the people who have actually responded and objected to this for their eloquency of their arguments. But I do believe that the environmental impact assessment and SEPA's interaction here in permitting pollution prevention and control permits here, and the amount of the substantial conditions under section 10 of this report that council officers are bringing forward in recommending the approval of the application do address many of the issues that have been brought forward, whether it be odour, whether it be dust, whether it be hydrology, air quality, etc. So on that basis, I am going to move this for approval of this application. So do I have a seconder, or do I have anybody wishing to bring an amendment? Councillor Brace.
I'll second you.
Brace. Is there anyone who'd like to bring any amendment? No. In that case, planning application number 21/00337, submitted by Colonside Farms Limited for the erection of 2 free-range hen sheds and associated infrastructure and access, drainage and landscaping, is hereby approved, subject to conditions stated in section 10 of the report. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time this morning on this application. We'll move on. Item number 8 is agenda item for planning land at 376 metres east of Nethercraig Caravan Park in Ayliffe for the extension to the holiday park for an additional 79 caravan pitches and other ancillary works. It's report number 28/23 by the Service Lead for Planning and Sustainable Growth.
Convener, sorry, if you could just give me one moment to ask Councillor Fairweather to come back.
Oh, sorry, apologies. I forgot he was away. We'll just hold on. Mr. Hunter, are you addressing this one, or?
I am, Councillor Cheat, yes.
But if you're readiness, we'll just take a minute just to actually try and get hold of Councillor Fairweather. Right, I think he's back. I'll just check. Councillor Fairweather, are you there?
Certainly am, convener. Thank you.
Great stuff. Thank you. You're back in. Okay, we're back. We're on agenda item 8 now, Councillor Fairweather. So we'll ask Mr. Hunter to lead off with the slides.
And thank you again, convener.
I can see them fine. That's fine, Alan.
Great, thank you. So this time we're dealing with a planning application for a proposed extension to an existing caravan park on land at Nethercraig near Ayliffe. We have a slide that shows the general location of the application site. We have the public road, the B954, that runs up to Craigila and Reekie Lynn, located round about 1.6 kilometres to the west of the site. The site identified just on the Ordnance Survey plan here at Nethercraig with the Ordnance Survey symbol for the caravan and camping site. Perhaps just draw members' attention to the nature of the road. This is, again, it's a single track road, this time serving Auchranie Farm. So this, in terms of vehicular access, is not a through public vehicular route. It's in essence a dead-end single track road that serves the farm, residential properties along it, and the existing caravan site. In a little bit more detail, we see the application site edged in red. This is the proposed extension area. At the left-hand side, the west end of the site, we have an area that currently accommodates 50 touring pitches. The central section that we see here accommodates 60 static pitches, and the proposal is for extension of the site to accommodate a further 79 static pitches. This is on an area of land that's about 4.5 hectares in area. In this case, it's non-prime agricultural land, but it is greenfield land. Again, in terms of our general development plan policies, our policies are broadly supportive of tourism development, of new development that's going to support tourism accommodation, and in this case we have a proposal that would facilitate the expansion of an existing business. So some support there to the principle of the development from development plan policies. Just in terms of the physical development that would be undertaken, some images that show the caravan site at present, the nature of the stances that would be formed, the concrete stance, and the chippy stone drives and access roads that would be formed throughout the site itself to accommodate the 79 vans. This is an aerial view looking in an easterly direction. You can see the touring area of the site. You can see the existing static caravan area, and the proposed extension area is the area beyond that in this slide, towards the top of the slide. Draw members' attention to the shelter belts, the tree planting that forms the periphery effectively to the north, east and south of the main body of the application site. Also, proposal to site some caravans within the area that we see located just to the east of buildings that are associated with the caravan park itself. So we have the public road that runs around here, down the side of the buildings, so reasonably well screened from the surrounding area by virtue either of buildings or the existing landscape framework. Looking at the southern boundary of the site from the public road, we see the existing former farm buildings associated with the existing operation. We'll have some caravans, static caravans located in the storage area that we see here, and conditions that require additional planting along this boundary to provide some additional screening. The main body of the extended site would lie beyond the trees that we see in this area. This is almost a ridge, so the land starts to slope down towards the north. So we do have existing caravans located beyond this area, but those are largely screened from the public areas to the south. Within the site itself, this is looking from the southeast corner back towards the existing static caravan park area. You can see the peripheral landscaping on the southern boundary. You can see the sloping down to the north. And again, you get an impression of the existing landscaping along the northern boundary. So very well screened by existing landscaping and existing landform. Site will be visible from elevated areas. You can see the hill in the background here. From elevated areas, the site will be visible, but that's at some distance and not such that it would affect the overall character or visual amenity of the area. Again, just another aerial view. We see the existing extent of the caravan site, all largely enclosed by landscaping, and the extension area in the area that we see just identified with the cursor. So you do see the nature of the landscape screening that it currently enjoys. Now, we do have a number of objections to the application, and those relate predominantly to issues related to access. And the access, the public road access to the site taken from round about the area identified with the cursor, and public road runs along to the left-hand side of the screen, again, just identified by the cursor. You'll note there are a number of residential properties in the area closest to the caravan site. Those are separated from the extension area by the existing caravan park, but these properties are reasonably close to the existing carriageway of the road, and certainly potential for them to be impacted by the additional vehicle movements that would be required in association with the extended area. Just a view looking from the site axis in a westerly direction, so you can see the single track nature of the road. As we see an existing passing place that was formed with the previous 60 static van extension to the site. And you can also see the proximity of the residential properties to the single carriageway road. Moving through the slides, this is a view looking in the opposite direction. So this is looking back towards the caravan site access. Just in the distance here, you can see the residential properties, and we have another passing place that has previously been formed on the access road itself. You'll see our roads colleagues have looked at this application in detail. They've had regard to the volume of traffic that's using the public road at the present time. They've had regard to the likely increase in traffic associated with the operation of the development, and they've indicated they've no objection to the proposal. They're satisfied it can be accommodated within the capacity of the road network, subject to the provision of additional passing places and pedestrian standoff areas along the 1.6 kilometre stretch between the site access and the B-class road to the west. Again, having regard to the nature of the traffic, the volume of traffic in comparison to the existing situation, in comparison to comparable situations throughout Angus, the impact on the amenity of the closest houses is not considered unacceptable. Again, just looking at the road itself, the left-hand image shows the junction with the B-class road at the western extent. First passing place identified, just you can see the vehicle parked in that parking place for purposes of taking the photograph. And we have further passing places along the route that serves the caravan site itself. But in general terms, it's the extension of an existing business, expansion of that business. It's in an area that benefits from tourism, where tourism plays an important part in the economy. In landscape terms, it's a very discreet site. It's very well screened. Consultation has not identified any significant issue in relation to potential amenity impacts, and potential impacts in relation to road traffic, that increased vehicular movement, have been considered and are determined to be acceptable by roads colleagues and by planning officers in relation to potential amenity impacts. But in general terms, the proposal complies with development plan policy. We have conditions that seek to limit the use and occupation of the site to ensure that it serves the holiday purpose that's intended. But subject to those applications, the proposal is recommended for approval. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. Thanks for the presentation. Has members any questions for Mr. Hunter on this application? No questions, can't see any. Any members got comments they wish to bring forward at this stage? Councillor Clark, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Convener. Well, as this is something that I know a lot about in my career, and I've listened very carefully, looked at this intently, and Mr. Hunter's answered everything that I would have asked him. And I can only say that I honestly would wish well and endorse. I think we need tourism, and this is a bonny site, and they're doing everything they can to make sure that they're not encroaching on anything. So, yeah, that's what I'd like to say, Convener. Well done.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Is there any more comments from anyone? No. Okay. I accept what you're just saying, Linda Clark, Councillor Clark. I'm sorry. I totally agree with it. The tourism is key industry. The quality of this site is well known. It's hard to see any loss of amenity here, significant screening, and I see no issues of access. So on that basis, I'll move approval of the application. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Beattie, thank you very much. Are there any amendments? Nope. Great. In that case, planning application 22/00287, submitted by another Craig Holiday Park for the extension to the existing holiday park, is hereby approved, subject to the conditions stated in section 10 of the report. Thank you, everyone, on that one. Agenda item 9 is first of 3 proposal application notices. This one's for land 500 metres east of Stony Groves, Liff, to provide a 24 megawatt solar farm with associated infrastructure by AAH planning. Committee is required to note the key issues identified at this pre-application stage and advise of any other issues it considers should be addressed in the planning application that is to be subsequently submitted. This is report number 2923. Alan, is there any slides, anything you want to, or Ed, to put forward this one?
Thank you, Convener. Yes, I have some slides if the committee would like to see them.
Go ahead, please. That's great. That's great. We can see them. Yeah.
Thank you. Just wait for it to come back onto my screen. It seems to have disappeared. There we go. Is that great? Okay, thank you, Convener. So this is the first of 3 items which relates to proposal of application notices, all of which relate to energy generation or storage related developments. Item 9 is a proposal of application notice for a proposed 24 megawatt solar farm, including associated infrastructure on land 500 metres east of Stony Groves in Liff. So to draw members' attention to the left-hand side Ordnance Survey Plan, it shows the approximate position of the site, which measures around about. Site's located around about 200 metres to the south of the village of Birkhill within Angus, and to the immediate west of Camperdown Park within the Dundee City Council area. The administrative boundary for Dundee City Council is illustrated by the approximate dotted orange line shown in the slide. So the application site in this case, as shown on the right hand side, is currently in agricultural use. It is prime quality agricultural land, and that is one of a number of matters which are listed in the report for members that require consideration as part of any subsequent planning application. And the final slide is just to show something that's been provided, approximate layout, so panels laid on horizontal rows with a number of constraints identified in different areas, such as areas where there's surface water flooding, areas where there's residential property. Officers have set out in the report before members what they consider to be the key planning issues having regard to the changed position brought forward by MPF 4, but members, as per usual procedure, are invited to identify any additional matters over and above those identified in 4.4 they would wish to see addressed as part of any subsequent application for permission.
Apologies, you're right. Yeah, so we'll start off with members. Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thanks, Convener, and thanks to Mr. Taylor for his presentation. I looked at the list of items that I think are under 4.4. There is an issue that I've raised previously on this sort of matter, and that is we are not given any guidance to what is the appropriate number of solar farms we should be, if you like, delivering to deliver net zero. That's, you know, we've got these long-term targets, but we don't have any short-term objectives. What I would like to see the planning officers provide is if you like, a list of what has been approved so far, what you know, what that's generating in terms of megawatts, and what proportion of agricultural land is being used. Because one of the criticisms we get is you're using prime agricultural land for these things. So it's a bit of a balanced one, and I think we need some sort of analysis done by, I suppose, planning officers as to where we are on that journey. You know, if we had 20 times as many solar farms as we had now, we might say we've got too many, but you know, we're at the starting point of that. So I think some sort of an analysis would be useful. And I'm conscious we have another one, which is the next item on the agenda. I think that would be useful for elected members to try and balance the issues, which is often what we have to do on planning.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. I couldn't agree more with that. It sounds very sensible. Councillor Beattie.
Yeah, there's just a quick question about, is there battery storage in this site? It's not mentioned, I can't see, so.
Well, Mr. Alan Hunter's going to come on at the end, so he will address that as well. It looks like. Is there any other questions, Chris, you want answered, or? No? Okay,
No,
Councillor
that's fine.
Gordon?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with what Councillor Duff said on that, and the points it raised. And I also wanted to add, in addition to that, I don't know if there's any chance, based on what's already been approved, if we could see that in some kind of map form around where these sites are in Angus, that would be really helpful as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Gordon. Councillor Brays.
Yes, I think Councillor Duff and Councillor Gordon are entirely correct. We really could do with that information. Thanks.
Great stuff. Mr. Hunter, do you want to come in?
If I can, convener, just very briefly, picking up on the point made by Councillor Duff, I think it's a very fair issue. We do have at present published guidance in relation to solar development, and it provides some information in relation to consented sites, but that's now a little out of date. So we will seek to update that and provide information to members, perhaps out with the committee process, but we'll do that as soon as we can. In relation to Councillor Beattie's question regarding battery storage, I'm afraid I'm not familiar with the detail of the proposal, and I'm going to pass you back to Mr. Taylor.
Thank you. Yeah, so the description of the proposal, this proposal, item 9, does not include reference to battery storage. I suppose is all I can say at this stage. Obviously, it's something we've got very little information of at this stage. We have an idea where the site is and what the proposed consultation arrangements are. But the applicant has not identified at this stage that they would want to include that in their scheme.
Okay, happy with that, Councillor Beattie, for the moment. Councillor Fairweather?
Right. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, well, I agree with Councillor Duff what he says. We've also got to take cognizance that our officers are extremely hard pressed at this particular time. I did note that Mr. Hunter did say he could bring it out with the committee, but all I would ask is that you be given a bit of time. We don't want officers working 24/7. That's all. That's all I would wish to say.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Fairweather. I agree, understand that. We are pressed, our planning officers at the moment, but it's an important thing that can be hopefully slotted in the list of priorities. Fine. Is there any other comments or questions from any of the members on this? If not, okay. I see committee's just required to note this report. So is the report noted?
Noted.
Okay, thank you. Proposal of application notice 22/00815 PAN is duly noted. Move on to agenda item 10, which is there's another proposal of application notice. I land at Cotton of Lowney and Forfar to provide a solar farm with associated infrastructure within a restored quarry by Industria Solar Forfar Limited. Again, Ed, is over to you.
Thanks again, convener.
It's fine.
Wait for this to come up on my screen. Sorry, I'm currently looking blind. There we go. So item 10, very similar type of application, very similar issues. This time it relates to a solar farm with battery storage and associated infrastructure and a cable route extending from the site in a northerly direction. The site's located at Cotton of Lowney to the east of Kingsmuir. So the application site, it's quite a squiggle. I'm having to show you on this one because of the nature of the proposal and the cable route that's proposed. But the main parts of the development, the solar panels themselves, will be located in 3 fields which occupy an area of land which straddles the Forfar to Carnoustie public road, which I believe is the B912. So the proposal would cover an area of up to 58 hectares in size. As part of the application, the proposal would include a cable route which would go along, and then I believe it would follow the route of the dismantled railway line in a northerly direction towards Octoforth Quarry, where some battery storage will be located, and then further north again towards Lochhead, I believe the site's called, where the concrete block making facility would be at least partly powered by the proposed development. So, the site itself is around about 400 metres southeast of Kingsmuir, or the solar panel area would be. Again, we're looking at a site which would primarily use prime quality agricultural land, and officers have set out again at 4.4 in this report what they consider to be the key issues. Obviously, having regard to the comments you've made on the previous item, that's been noted, but if there are any additional matters you would wish to see addressed, officers would gladly take that forward with the applicant.
Thanks, Ed. Again, open to members. Other issues over and above that have already been highlighted in the report? Anyone wants to raise at this point? No? Good. Okay. In that case, again, this report noted.
Noted.
Thank you very much. Okay. So, yeah, okay. Proposal application notice 23/00011 PN is duly noted. Last item of business today is agenda item 11, which again is a further plan. I won't even try to pronounce this. It sounds like, looks to me, land at Ballywillow, perhaps, I'm guessing, done by Montrose to provide an energy storage facility, access, boundary treatments and landscaping on land at the farm for Whirlwind energy storage. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, convener. So item 11, as you've suggested, I'm going to have a go at Ballywillow on this one, but I think I might be copying Councillor Bray's earlier when he discussed it. So correct. This is a thank you, 10 points. So this is the final item. It is a proposal for the creation of an energy storage facility, associated access and infrastructure on land 500 metres south of Ballywillow by Dun, Montrose. So the site is located around about 400 metres to the south of the A935, which is the road which connects Montrose in the east to Brecon in the west, north of a minor public road, and around about 500 metres to the north of Bridge of Dun, which is a Category A listed building. The proposal would occupy an area of around 2 hectares of what I believe is subprime agricultural land, so in this case Category 3.2 land. Development is likely to involve 50 containerised battery storage units. As with other sort of energy-related issues, the report before members is very similar to those related to the solar development, and again at 4.4 sets out what officers consider to be the key planning issues associated with this application, but members are invited to identify any additional matters they would wish to see addressed.
Thanks again, Ed. Again, open to members again for any other issues they want to raise or be looked at on this one, or are they happy with everything that's in the report? Okay, everybody, thanks very much again. I can just make sure everybody's happy this report's noted.
Noted.
Okay, proposal application notice 23/00014 is duly noted. Thank you everyone for your time and attention this morning. It's been a long meeting, but a very interesting one. I hope everybody's found as well. We've finished a little bit quicker than I thought we might. Okay, thanks again.
Thank you, David. I just want to thank you, David, for that meeting this morning. You got through it unfazed and everything, and I just want to say thank you very much for conducting the meeting so well this morning, David.
Well done.
Have a good afternoon, everybody.
Bye-bye.